wait a minute. We're on the wrong side.
There's a good reason for that, Chip.
For me being over here and you being over there?
Yes, because it's a Fiber Hustle takeover of Fiberchats.
Fiberchats with Irina running the show?
Yes, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Fiberchats, from Fiber Hustles to Fiberchats. So I have a question between us YouTubers. You've been at it much longer than I have. I'm about to celebrate my 1 year. You have done it for 4.
And you have how many episodes out?
Well, we're not gonna mention that.
A lot.
It's been a busy year. But when you do it for 4 years, do you ever get tired?
You know what? I mean, we've been actually chatting about this, and it's we're Fiber Hustle, and what is it? We're like a crawl. We're at a crawl pace.
Yes.
But it's really, we have been doing it for so long, and it's at first we're really worried about the number of views and the number of thumbs ups and the thumbs downs, but it's really, actually, it's not the reason why we do it. We got caught up in the beginning of when you're running a YouTube show, it's putting out content, and you're worried about you actually start chasing the wrong thing. And for us, it's all about making the project. So yeah, you get tired of it's a lot of work to put out a YouTube channel, Irina, but all that editing, when it really comes together, it pays off because it really highlights what we both like to make.
Yeah, and we would love to do it more, but careers change, job change over the last 4 years. We still love it. We still love to bring in our tribe. That's why we do other things such as the bingos. Then we have just regular knit alongs. Chip has a sew night. I join a couple knit nights and things like that. So although we're not recording all the time, which I really wish we were, but I mean, things just happen. Also, you've seen our show, I think, hopefully.
I've been watched.
A lot of editing and stuff goes into it. So we're not the type just to throw up a camera and put it out into the world, which is great. But we're kind of if you watched X-Files, the Dana Scully, as season 1 of Dana Scully, she looks all right, but then she keeps on evolving to look gorgeous at the end. That's how our journey through taping our own show has gone. Our first episode was awkward, just maybe didn't look good, and we just keep on editing, bringing new cameras in, all kinds of graphics and stuff.
Sneaking cameras in, sneaking equipment in.
And
you mean when somebody asks you if how you're getting more and more beautiful with every episode, it wasn't the Botox?
I'm ready to go to the doctor and tell him I have headaches.
This one, lottery dream would be the first day he would go out and get a Tesla and drive that Tesla to get Botox.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Let's go back to that first episode. Let's go to that decision. What made you decide to start a podcast?
So I don't know where to go from this. So my little fiber journey started out crochet and then eventually got into knitting. But when I started knitting, I was looking at YouTube, how to knit and things like that. And I came across some of these other channels, and I didn't really see anybody like myself or even that many male podcast people or crochet even. So I was oh, I kind of want to try this. When we started, I watched Levi from WTF Knitting, John Boy New York, Jimmy, who everybody loves. And those are the only two I really saw, except for Arne and Carlos. They were on a totally different level than myself, especially and Levi and Jimmy. And I think Sweet Tea was around, but I didn't see anyone like me who was starting out, just hey, here's what I'm kind of doing, watch my evolution. I tried to record a few episodes, not even a few episodes. I tried to record by myself, and I am much better working off of someone.
Have I even seen that?
That's Shift Delete. Especially the banter I know we have. So I talked him into it, and then we did the dreaded first episode. We had a different name. We were Common Threads.
Well, hold on. Yeah. So we're Common Threads, different name. We're in a we gave ourselves 3 feet by 3 feet of a little sewing space. And like, we had one camera, we had one light, and it was like, we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. And also, we kind of went by what other people were. It was the time when everybody's like, here's what tea I'm drinking, here's blah, blah, blah. And after we watched it, we're like, this is not us. And then the second episode, we changed our name. Chip came up with the fabulous name of Fiber Hustle. It should be the Fabulous Fiber Hustle.
No.
But yeah, no. But then the second episode, we became more of us, more banter, more just witty. And I think people tune in more just for that than the actual makes.
Right. Well, was it difficult because you're not doing the same craft? Like Chip is concentrating on sewing and quilting, and you knitting predominantly. Like, is it ever difficult to decide who is going to talk about what you're going to talk, or do fiber crafts have something in common always?
So I feel like that's a 2-part question with our format in general. You know, we like to just take turns and like, hey, this is what I'm working on, and this is what I've made, and like our acquisitions. So it has a natural flow, but I think it's kind of fun. And actually it's really helpful that maybe I don't know exactly what his craft really entails and like what it takes to come up with a particular stitch or anything. So Aaron he really has to dumb it down for me, and like
It's just easy,
which is, I think, helpful for new people who are just coming into the craft to really be able to embrace and feel like, oh, I'm not jumping into something that's way above my pay grade, and I actually could do that too. So I think it's kind of helpful. On the second part, it would be, I really feel like there are some channels that are very successful when both creators are into the same craft. And then you can start really digging into those high-level conversations that, or deep-level conversations, I guess, that really help, you know, like, hey, I'm struggling on this, and you can, you know, you can really think about and deepen that understanding.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Even going back to your first part of not knowing each other's crafts, a lot of times I won't ask Kim questions because I know I should probably save it for the show, because there's people like me that are knitters that want to know, well, not all the time, but want to know more about Chip's crap. About Chip's crap. So I'll save it for this is us. So I'll save it for the show, and he does the same as well. So yeah, the only time it's hard is when I haven't worked on something and he's ready to record, or he hasn't worked on something and I'm ready to record. That's like, oh, can you kind of wait till I catch up on something?
I mean, Irina, if you're doing dishcloths, you're ready to bang out those episodes.
People love knitting dishcloths.
I actually just watched that like 15 minutes ago. And you turned it into the whole community event. Like you did the knit along with that, right?
The dishcloth revolution.
It was a dishcloth revolution where we took all our hustlers. We call our, I don't want to say our fans, our squad hustlers. And we had a dishcloth revolution, and we said clean up hustlers was the hashtag. And I hosted two or three different Zooms where people from Australia, from Canada, somebody from South America just joined us for like 2 hours. I had 4 different sessions. We just knit and talked the whole time.
And tell them what abuse I suffered. I would go into Wave High, and all of a sudden they're all telling me, giving me the dishcloth love, and like how crazy I am for not wanting to do it.
I know, and look how clean the kitchen is now because of those.
Have you ever like been seduced by each other's craft? Like, have you ever wanted to try your hand at that?
No.
Yes.
Yes, but no. Chip and I made a bag,
like a project
bag like 2 years ago. So I put the zipper in, I did everything. He showed me everything. We were across each other doing sewing stuff, and I got done. I was very proud of myself, but I said, meh, it just wasn't me. I love looking at his quilts though. And even when he used to make garments, I was always envious of it. It's just when I get in front of that sewing machine, I feel nothing.
And I'm,
can I ask you about family budget? Like, is there?
oh, she wants to know. She wants the receipts.
Do you want Chip's budget or my budget?
Well, is there like any competition on how much one can spend on supplies?
How much one can save, because I'm the saver.
Irina, this was going so well.
May I tell a little story about?
And by the way, whatever's going on Fiberchats stayed on Fiberchats. So like, don't worry. Like,
Nobody's gonna watch this, right? Like and
well,
subscribe.
whoever is gonna watch it, yeah, please like and subscribe. But like, we're gonna keep the secrets.
No, okay. So everybody, zoom in. Is this my camera? So everybody, zoom in. So, and I'm sorry if we're taking over your interview. This is just the way
That
we.
was the plan. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So,
What are you going to share?
I'm going to share the sewing machine fiasco.
It wasn't a fiasco.
So I got Chip a sewing machine. This is how all this started. He asked it for.
So I started sewing in 2015.
Yes.
And because I was like, I have a birthday coming up, and I went to Lululemon and they had like 3 racks for men's clothes, and I just was floored at the price tag for any of the men's clothes. And I'm like, well, I can make that.
Yeah, why buy it for like 20 bucks when you can make it for 120 bucks? Anyways, I'm telling the sewing machine story. So I got him a brother sewing machine. He was doing great for a couple years. Then he kind of upgraded to a Burnett.
So Bernina has their little sister, a lower price point called the Burnett line.
So he had that for a couple months, and downstairs, you can see into his sewing room, his old sewing room, and I was kind of just doing some gardening and stuff. This is gardening. This is me weeding and stuff. And I looked through the window and I was like, that's funny. I don't remember Chip having a touchscreen sewing machine. And I didn't even think about it. Then like 3 days later, I walked down and he goes, hey, I've been keeping something from you. I was like, oh God, where's this going? Then he tells me he buys this sewing machine, deal of a lifetime.
It was secondhand.
Secondhand, it costs more than a car.
No.
No, a used car.
A used car.
A 1997 Prius. But so Chip really doesn't have a budget because he snuck this sewing machine in.
I mean, it was like, we call it Chipazon.
Whenever Amazon comes, it is called Chipazon.
Well, how about storage space wise? Like how big of a stashes are we talking about?
I would say Erin has an 1/8 of stash of what I do. And we could actually talk about square footage in the house.
Like,
because
do we need like an extension to the house?
We actually do. I mean, like a dream. So, okay, if anybody wants to GoFundMe,
buy me a coffee.
We need one of those barns that you could put in the backyard that you can, it has power and everything. I mean, like a true craft space would be like our ultimate dream. But square footage, like, we have a split level house, and the downstairs is our TV room, and that's where I started sewing, and that's where our first episode was recorded. Then I got the long arm, and I don't know about you, but like, how many homes have you ever seen? You go in, and it's like they have this fancy dining room, and it's a museum. Nobody goes in and eats there. You all eat in your kitchen. And so like, we don't have a dining room any longer. We have a long arm. And then I actually did take over the upstairs living room too. So now this is a recording space.
Irina, we have nowhere to sit. We eat on the downstairs couch. We live on the downstairs couch.
I sort of love it though, because you use every square inch of your house, like it's all usable space.
It is
true.
It is.
It is true. It's like,
but we need more.
No, we don't. Because more means more stuff. But yes.
Let me ask you something. Like, I'm very curious. So I'm learning about quilting through my channel, basically. So like, people who I interview, with every interview, I'm learning something new about quilting. And I noticed there's like 2 schools of quilters. There are people who see it as pure art, and then there are people who see it as craft, something usable, something you put on your bed, you use for dog blankets, baby blankets, that kind of things. Where you fit into that category?
So when I was originally starting to quilt, I mean, I started first off with garments, like Erin was saying, but it was like, you want to be adventurous. And I didn't feel like, I don't really have that personality where, I mean, I'm over the top without having to look like it. And so I moved over into quilting, and like, you're exactly right, Irina, where you have traditional quilts and you have like, there's I'm going to steal one of my books, but like there's books that show you page after page of like really what a utility quilt would be, where it is going to be something that is maybe more modern, or it is more traditional, but it's a quilt. It's a quilt in the traditional sense that you do put it around you. You do put it on a bed. You do have it on the couch, and it's passed on. But then I'm also exploring, and I have it's not even a plug, but it's another book, and it's like more art books, or art quilts, where it's more free form, and it's really, you don't necessarily have it all mapped out when you first start. And I'm loving looking at that adventure. So I actually have both sides that I appreciate, and it's like every time you get to reinvent yourself and try something new.
He has made a 3D quilt, the Allison Glass Trinket So Long, and instead of just doing a regular quilt, he actually made like towers of it that was, you could turn it, and each side had its own pattern. And every time you make something, it just amazes me, and that is one of the best things you ever made, just because it was so outside of the box.
And that is going back up at my work as a big display.
That's wonderful. I love that. It's like people can admire it, otherwise like it's just on your bed, right? So nobody sees it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to just stash something like that away, and it needs to be seen.
You know, I mean, like there's, I don't know. I mean, like in knitting, maybe one of you could answer this. Like in knitting, are there as many opportunities for art?
Well, if you think of like Rusty, he does his knitting. Rusty from the Artful
He's
Stitch.
the only one I can think of.
True, he's the only one I can think of as well, who does his art stuff, which is gorgeous. I mean, but if you look at like a Stephen West Shaw, I consider that art. Some of those patterns and the way that things are put together. I mean, it's all art, just more art playing with color instead of like
dimension or.
Yeah, but there are some dimensions with different stitches and patterns and stuff like that. But as far as a quilt pattern, you could probably knit something that would just take a really long time.
Do it.
Oh, okay. Because I have all the time in the world. Yes.
Erin, like when you knit, like what attracts you? Like, are you going for practicality? Are you going for something you know you're gonna wear, or you can give to cheap to wear? Or is it like some interesting construction? Like what gets your attention?
It's all of that. Mostly something I would want to wear, because that's why I love Instagram, and I love when people post pictures of them wearing something. Like shawls all day are just great. I love wearing shawls. I wear them at work, I wear them at home all the time. But I love when people actually post pictures of them wearing the shawl instead of just putting it on a fence, which is great, putting it on a fence. But I want to see what it looks like in an actual person, especially like a male. That's why I love the hashtag was it men in shawls or guys in shawls, because I never went and thought of knitting something until I saw like a hashtag or something like that of a gentleman wearing something. I'm like, oh, I do want to knit that. That's why it's so important to actually wear something once it's finished. But as far as practicality and things like that, I just kind of go for it. Sometimes it's just to do the process of knitting, and sometimes it's just to make something fabulous, or the color attracts me in certain situations.
Well, I mean, so I saw that recently you sort of dived into the whole dyeing of the yarn.
I did. So I used to be, actually before I knitted, I was just a blacks, grays, blues person, and knitting has kind of opened up my entire world of color. And for years I've been wanting to try to dye yarn, but I was just like, oh, I can't do that. I don't know if I can do that. And then Chip and I painted for a few years, just random paints. So we have some of our art we call it art, some of our really horrible, really good paintings up around the house. And during COVID, we hadn't painted for a few years. He gave all our paints to someone at his work.
Who is actively painting.
Who was actively painting. But once those left, I was like, you know, when a child is playing with a toy or not playing with the toy, then some other kid wants to play with it. They're like, oh, that's mine. I want to play with it now. Once the paints left, I was like, oh, well, now I want to paint. And I was like, well, how can I create with color instead of painting? And I saw recently all my friends who are doing dyeing and stuff like that. I was like, well, if they can do it, I can try to do it. And then I went to my friend Carrie's house from the Creative Obsession. Love her. And we just had 2 or 3 days of just dyeing and things like that. And she taught me techniques and just different colors and how to put things together. Fell in love with it.
Irina, okay. So getting back to your budget question. So Erin, I'm all about chip is on. Erin is like, you're at the end of the week and you're your hands shaking at the cash register, not sure if it's gonna clear. That's the way he operates 24/7. He never spends money.
I don't spend money.
This one has been like, oh, I've got mad tricks with that credit card, buying all of his supplies for dyeing. I mean, like, he has embraced this and is in love. I mean, like, he's got moves now with that credit card.
I have fallen in love with it. I love to put on my gloves, put it on my goggles, my apron.
Remind me, we need to replace those.
Gloves? Why do we need gloves?
You keep taking everything.
Oh, okay. We take everything. But yeah, and you get in there, I put on the tunes, and I kind of just go into my own world and just pour speckled dye, and I'm in love with it. So my stash has grown just because I have all this yarn now. And I'm like, do I want to sell? Do I not want to sell? I have to sell because I have all this stuff. And I'm so not confident in my dyeing. I don't know.
But there's, okay, two things.
Should we like ask our audience to see if you should sell? Like, guys, write it down. Like, should Erin sell?
Comment below and like and subscribe. I think it'll be fun.
One, it shouldn't be prescriptive. You're dying, and you're learning, but you're really coming up with some amazing.
Thank you. I love it.
Some amazing skeins, and I mean, like, he's doing things that are kind of inspired by record album covers, and it's working.
Yeah, music is the biggest thing in my life. So when I started dyeing colors, I'm like, well, what's my inspiration? It didn't take long to say, hey, records, because I also collect records. I have like many different records.
And you need an expansion for this house.
I do. For my record collection, I do need an expansion. So
he did the Go-Go's.
I did the Go-Go's recently, a Candlebox album, Cinderella for the 80s people out there. I'm working on a Tom Petty colorway right now with my friend Deb from Serial Knitters, and just all that kind of stuff. From my inspiration is from music, and I put on an album. I listen to that album while I try to create that color right now. That's what's happening right now, at least.
What was like the most surprising thing for you, and when you like first put that first skein into the pot, like what you didn't expect?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. I didn't expect there's obviously a formula between heat, how much acid and things like that, and what kind of fiber you're using. I thought that if I started just pouring a few colors on top of each other, it would turn just into brown mud or black and look terrible. But now, after learning that if you pour like a yellow and a blue on top of that, it's going to change the color a little bit, but it's not, everything's, if you keep on pouring colors, it's just not going to change brown or black or like a mud. Also, I always heard that it was different, but taking a superwash and a non-superwash, and you put those in the exact same dye pots, the superwash is going to have a bright, vivid color, and the non-superwash is going to be kind of just more muted. And I just never realized the difference, even though people told me that, until you put the two skeins in the exact same dye. You're going to be blown away. You're like, what? How are these the exact same color?
Okay, like you now go back to your original stash, right? Now that you're a dyer and you've experienced, right?
Thank you.
You look at other people's work and you're like, oh, do, like you should have put a little bit more sprinkles in there, or like how do you look at other people's yarn?
I really haven't compared to other people's yarn, but I do look and admire it and think, how did they get this, or how did they do this? I realized that I am not good at speckling. So when I hung out with Deb from Serial Knitters, who's one of my favorite dyers a couple weeks ago.
Was that another name
That
drop?
was a name drop. There's gonna be a lot of name drops here. She kind of actually showed me a few tricks and stuff, like, oh, it doesn't have to be as complicated as I overcomplicate things. It doesn't have to be as complicated in my head. So, and one thing I can say is, for at least my experience, I know that especially dyers are very hush hush and don't share any like secrets or anything like that. Everybody has been so generous to me once I started dyeing, with tips and tricks, that it's just, like, from Kevin from Needles at the Ready, Nancy at Trilogy Yarns, Deb, my friend Carrie, like I mentioned,
who are already selling.
yeah, all these people are already selling. And I mean, they're not saying, here's my recipe, da, 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 but they've just been so amazing. It's just like the knitting community. When you have questions and stuff, people just, I'm assuming the quilting community
Even better. Even better
than the knitting community. Wow, that's amazing. Just everybody's so generous.
Right. Well, let's talk about communities. So how did the idea of bingo became a thing?
That was all COVID related, because when was our first bingo?
It was probably 3 months. COVID, the big shutdown probably happened, what, in March? And our bingo was, actually, it was probably May. It was probably in May that we had a bingo. And I remember Chip says, hey, we should have a bingo with some of our viewers and stuff like that. And I swear to God, I poo-pooed it. I was like, yeah, how's that going to work? I don't think this is going to work. Da, da, da. Then he says, no, let's just give it a try. I'll do all the cards. We weren't going to have prizes.
I came up with Fiber Hustle name. I came up with bingo.
But I have the face.
He does.
I'm totally kidding.
Tell me about the first bingo. Like what was it?
We didn't even have a theme or anything. We weren't even supposed to have prizes. But for some reason, some people knew bingo was coming up, sent us prizes to give away. And I don't even remember much about it. Well, I do remember the bingo.
I really don't even remember the first bingo game.
Yeah, it was one game. So it was like 2 years ago. But basically, people send in like a trinket, a skein of yarn, things like that.
Project bag.
And we're like, hey, everybody's surprised that we had gifts and stuff like that. I don't even think we had music. Did we have music?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we had music and stuff. And then people just loved it. So we're like, let's have it like around Halloween. It wasn't, we didn't have a cadence yet. Yeah, we didn't have a cadence. Then once it started to take off, people started sending just like huge bags, or here's a whole fade and stuff like that of things to give away. Then it took a while for the quilting community and sewers to start sending in fabric and things like that. And now we just get stuff all the time that people stop sending stuff to us. They send it for the bingo games.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
Like, we've never kept any. Maybe one thing have I ever kept, because people are so generous, and I'm like, how are you this nice?
Yeah, and it went from one bingo game that we started hosting 2 bingo games when we do have bingo, and we kind of have a consistency of every other month now. Pride's one of our bigger ones. Halloween is one of our favorite ones, because literally we don't make everybody one, but we do make everyone dress up. And you should see the costumes that people come with our Halloween
have
bingo.
really gone over the top, amazing. And like, they come with their A game.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, I mean, how many times have we've all seen, whether it's in the knitting community or the quilting community, there's somebody who, or there's like a company or a team, or even a social person who is like, hey, we'd love, and just an open invitation to join their virtual event online. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to know anybody. And we all, like, even we feel that way. There's things that we want to join, but then we're like, but I'll tell you, it's like, that has been the gateway that we really have gotten to know people, because, you know, through this YouTube channel, it's usually one-sided. Somebody's listening or watching in, but they don't get to be part of the conversation. And with Bingo, it's all free form, and it's a lot of fun to get to know people.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about what you've been doing, because even though you don't put too many episodes out, somehow you're like very active in the community. And I think it's through those knit alongs and through that bingo game. So I actually was thinking, because I was like, okay, what if I'll do a knit along, right? But then I'm like, but who is gonna join me? And you giving me the courage to try it. So maybe.
No, you should.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that when you do put something out there into the universe, the right people are going to find you. Like you're going to find your tribe or your squad. You know, it's like that was the whole reason why we started the bingo and like the quilt along and the knit along and the what do we call it? Dishcloth revolution was because it was like we all had this need during the pandemic to like interact with one another. We didn't have the same options to, you know, just go down to your local craft store and, you know, just be with your people. So it's like, yeah, if you see those, sometimes it's either going to work or it's not, but you won't know until you actually join.
Yeah, and you don't even need to host your own knit along or things like that. Join a knit along or a quilt along, and then you meet people through that. And it's just, yeah, it's just something like, even when I did the Stephen West was at Vertices Unite last year, I was like, well, what if like no one joins? And like, there's a lot of people who joined that knit along. I was like, holy schmoly, and it was awesome. I had a lot of fun. And I love entertaining. I used to be a musician, used to be up there on the stage rocking all the time. And now Fiber Hustle is my totally different, but kind of way of entertaining. So the bingo, the podcast, or things like that.
Irina, when we first met, he told me, I don't want to intimidate you, but I'm kind of a big deal.
I was back then.
I mean, are you feeling like you're a big deal now? Like, do you ever get that celebrity?
Oh, no!
God, no. We're just too.
To use your band analogy, what do you always say?
We're like the most popular, unpopular band out there.
Other bands get us.
Yeah, so we always talked about it. I feel like the general public, we might be too much for and don't get us, but other podcasters have always liked us, and I don't understand why. It's like, yeah.
Like, well, let me tell you a story. So yesterday, this girl followed me on Instagram, and I have the rule that every crafter that follows me, I follow them back until I reach the limit that Instagram decided to put. So I followed her back, and she wrote immediately. She was like, oh my God, I'm so like blown away that such a famous person would follow me. And I was like, who are you talking about, right?
we
not working around.
We do get that kind of reaction every once in a while, but even during COVID, we would get questions from people like in our DMs, not everybody, and we would just literally call them back like with the camera, and they'd be like, well, hello?
I'm terrible about that. I will blind call people on video, and they're like, nobody does this.
Yeah, it's just, we like to have conversation with people, especially like in our YouTube comments. If somebody's taking the time to say, hey, I did this, blah, 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 we make sure that we respond to every single comment because someone took the time to say something to us. So we need to say something back, even in our DMs and Instagram.
It's being grateful.
Yeah, have a conversation.
I mean,
we've
seen some personalities that were like, I just need to let you know, I can't reach, I'm too busy. And it's like, whoa, you know, we try to live in that gratitude, and it is authentic. I assure you that if you took the time to see us and our tacky little show, we appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
I swear, like I just posted the Pride special episode, and as soon as I posted it, I had a whole exodus of people unsubscribing and unfollowing me. And
really?
I was like, yeah, I was like shocked, I was hurt. And then the comments came, and people were like thanking me for providing the platform to the LGBTQ makers out there. And I was like, you know what? These are the people that I'm doing it for, and they just made it all worth it for me. So I feel like when I read those comments, like every once in a while, I'll go to like, why am I even doing it? Why am I putting myself out there? Why am I spending all this time editing? And then I remember why, it's like when I read those comments.
You do have to have a thick skin for YouTube.
What someone else thinks of you is none of your business. And they are watching for free. So if they have all of these judgments for you, like, bye-bye.
Yeah, you need to find, like we said, you find your people, your gathering. That's what we found. We know we're not the biggest podcast. It's fine. Like some of our friends have thousands more views, but we found our people who love coming to our tacky little show and when we do record, and that's what I love.
It's not like we used to look at the numbers and this is all the social side of what we do. There's this craft that we love and there's this craft that we enjoy and we're both learning. And the best thing is that when I find and I forget and get over myself and I'm authentically in the moment and I'm talking about what I'm really in love, it just that communication happens, and that's when we're finding our bliss.
Okay, so like when you think at the beginning of your podcast, right? First episode, second episode, who did you talk to?
Ooh. Wow, Irina, that's a great question. I mean,
because like now you have all the bingo and you have people in mind and you have some faces that watching you. Who did you talk to back then?
I think we were talking to us.
Yeah, we were talking just like we still kind of do.
If we're having a good time, we're hoping that it translates. But like literally, it's for us. I mean, I think I love watching myself. I think it's funny.
Yeah, he does. You're your greatest fan. But I think like the second episode, literally, I think besides us, we started talking to the people who did comment.
Yeah.
Just because we're like, well, we know Lisa is watching, Jimmy's watching, all those kind of people are watching. So this is a show for us and you, and then everybody else started to come along. Then you learn, we have people that comment on every single one. You know these people and you start to get to know these people and what they do and don't like. Not we're going to alter our show, but just that kind of thing. You just learn that's who we're talking to. I don't know.
And I kind of love that.
Language.
So a lot of the people that we did talk to, or like we tease that we're name dropping, but it's like we're talking about with the people that we interact. And like we had one feedback once where it was like, oh, you've got to, they did a critique of our show, and it was and kind of implied that you've got to be in the in crowd to understand some of the conversations that we're having. But really, we're making, when we drop an episode or we're in the moment talking on our podcast, it's really, we're talking to the people that we're interacting with.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about wearing things outside. Like, have there ever been any negative reaction to you wearing the handmade things you saw or things you knitted? Like, did anybody ever say anything about it? Or is it
negative? No. There's only been one time. It wasn't even negative. I wore my Marled Mania shawl a few years ago at work, and sweater, Marled Mania sweater. And the only comment that wasn't even, again, negative, they're like, did you make that sweater? I said, yeah. They're like, it looks homemade. I said, oh, okay. And I took it, was like, she's kind of shady anyways. But but I was kind of like, okay, that's fine. But I wore that same sweater to pick up pickles one time at Bob's Corn and Maize Farm during Halloween.
You gotta go.
And gotta go get these pickles. Oh my God. But it was a pumpkin patch basically. And I walked up just to get the pickles.
Enough with the pickles.
Not pick up the pumpkins. And two different gentlemen far apart said, love your sweater, dude. I was like, oh, thank you so much. Go on, you want to say something?
No, I mean, I will in the house say, hey, is it supposed to ride this way? I will ask questions, but I never
oh, no.
Yeah.
For some reason, I have a cardigan that rides up high in the back, and I'm like, So I need to play with it. Yeah, it rides up high, but no negative. Wear my shawls at work all the time. People are like, oh, I love it. People know me as the knit guy. Yeah, but I haven't had any negative, and you don't. It's hard to take a quilt outside.
So when I was actually wearing, I've made some prototype jeans.
Oh, yeah.
I've made shorts. I've made dress shirts, and it's always funny when people are so astonished that you can make these things. Like, and I'm sure the same is true about knitting. It's like, you can do that, and it's more of a response of astonishment, which it's like, yeah. Have you seen YouTube? You can learn anything.
You can do anything on there.
Now, there was one pair of shorts that I wore when I was still going to the University of Washington, and I shouldn't have been wearing those. Those were the nastiest, funkiest thing. And again, like, nobody said anything to me, but they really should have.
Were they giving you the side eye the whole time?
I'm like,
choices.
I don't know. It's like, but they made it out into the world, and they will never do it again.
Did you burn them, or where are they?
They're kind of night jammies now.
Put them on. Put them.
Or frame them, and then they become art.
Irina, have anybody ever asked you or questioned your make?
No, but sometimes I wish they did, because like I actually talked about it. So I learned Shetland lace sort of on the fly. Like I just thought it was pretty, and I went and I started doing it, but I never like actually truly learned it from it. Like I never took classes. I don't know if I'm doing things right or wrong.
Did your work show that you kind of learned it?
I don't know. So my dream is actually to go to Shetland and have someone criticize it and like look at it and say like, you're doing this wrong and you should have done it that way. Like because I want to know. Like
so you want to critique.
Curiosity, right?
Sounds like a reality show when you bring up your make and you walk away and they go, this is garbage.
Would you ever do that, Irina? Would you ever go on like a knitter's, kind of like the Great Sewing Bee or the Great British Bake Off? Would you go on to a show like that?
I think so. I mean, I think it's fun. Like, I mean, for me, it's like my whole attitude about knitting is like, what can possibly go wrong, right? So it's like
a lot. I could say that for fact.
There's a pattern right there. What could go wrong?
A lot.
I mean, so you just undo it and you start again. Like it's never that drastic, you know.
That's the advantage of, I think, knitting is like with quilting and sewing, you can't uncut the fabric.
Right.
True, but I was thinking you can seam it with the seam ripper and stuff.
Oh, but I do.
Yeah, I've seen those nights.
Well, you can probably reuse it for something else. You can cut it into smaller pieces.
You can probably make big pillow covers with it.
Oh God, enough with the pillows that we don't have.
I mean, we've had pillows downstairs that need covers for 3 years now. And every episode, I always try to get them to make them.
Well, let's talk about like everything you make. Like what happens to everything you make? Is it like all for you? Do you gift it away? Do you do like, do you use them as prizes on your bingos? Like what happens to every single item you make?
You did the cancer donation.
I would donate to the hospital down the street a bunch of hats. I donate hats to Mary's Place in Seattle, which is an organization for ladies trying to get their lives back together. And I used to donate a lot more the last few years. Well, every winter I try to donate hats for the homeless. The last few years I've not been selfish, but most of it's been for me or like my family. Like I'm knitting my sister and mom a lot of stuff. Knit my neighbor a few things. So it really fluctuates. It's not all me. It's not all for everybody else. Current state, it's mostly for me.
That's
people
fine.
ever harass you like for gifts? Do they say like, well, you like doing it anyway?
His sister and his mother.
I had to have a conversation with some people at work, like when I make sweaters and things like that. Oh, make me that. I'm like, then I actually took them and said, hey, listen, this is just how much the yarn is. You don't have to pay me for labor and stuff like that. But the yarn is this much. They're like, yeah, I'm out. I'm like, yeah.
Well, you know what my trick is? I tell them that it has to be hand washed. That usually kills all the interest.
It's hand washed and you have to blow dry it cool and stuff like that. So And you,
I've given, believe it or not, only 3 quilts away. One to the neighbor, one to my coworker, and one to Ireland that made it back here, and it didn't arrive. It was refused in Ireland somewhere, and it wasn't her fault. So that thing is more traveled. I'm a little bit more timid about my makes and giving them away because I really want them to be nice. I don't want them to be like, he tried.
but your stuff is so good. Nobody would ever say that, I think.
I'm the worst. My own critic.
Yeah.
Like, are you perfectionist in everything, or just when it comes to your quilts?
So we were deep cleaning last weekend, and Aaron was, he was so good. He was doing the kitchen floor, and then I come in and I'm like, what's going on underneath the stove and the refrigerator? Next thing you know, I'm on my hands and knees, and we're scrubbing it. I'm like,
Daddy Buzzkill.
It comes from my upbringing, and I had an old boss. She would come in and like, oh, we need to work on this. Next thing you know, everything is torn apart, and you are like, you're not just like arranging or straightening, you are cleaning. And that's just my personality.
Chip is a perfectionist in every way. I am not. It might be like the musician in me. Yeah, great, play all the right notes, but there's something that goes a little bit out of place, then that's fine. You just keep on rocking and keep on going.
Which makes you, I think, a good knitter or a great knitter, because you don't self-edit. You are able to find the flow, where I'm like constantly editing and evaluating my last step. So it's not like it's really hard for me to get into that flow state, but it's like, it's so precious when I do.
What's in your head when you quilting? Like, are you thinking technical thoughts, or are you thinking like the book you read last night?
I'm in the moment with what I'm sewing, but I'm often like, I'm listening to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love Stargate Universe, Stargate SG-1. Like, I like to listen in on these shows that I have watched a million times, just because I already know what's going on. I don't need to watch it. Yeah, so I always have some kind of Netflix or Chipazon Prime that I'm watching.
Well, you started basically, like, if you think about it, not that long ago, right? It's like, it's still sort of under a decade old crafts. Do you see yourself like 10 years from now? Do you see yourself buying some loom and weaving, or something, like doing something completely different?
I don't know. See, knitting took over me by surprise in the first place. The reason I started knitting, crocheting, anything with fiber is once I got the sewing machine for Chip, the first one, we'd go to these fabric stores all the time. I'd just sit there and kind of be like, okay, here I am again. And then one day I said, hey, I'm going to do something while I'm here. So I went over, bought a loom and some yarn, and I started looming, and I tried knitting, was unsuccessful. Then eventually made my way to crochet for like a year and a half, but I always liked the look of stockinette stitch. Finally took just like a knitting class just to learn how to cast on, do a few rows, and then took off from there. So now that yarn dyeing is in my world, that is something I love. And in a few years, I'm thinking I would like,
what's happening in a few years?
No, I think, well, she's talking about evolution, like maybe a few years. I think it'd be cool to start, I think weaving is cool. I love the look and when people do weaving. And
what's weaving?
Weaving, like,
if you're gonna weave, you really need an extension on your house, because those looms are like the size of church organ.
Yes, like, like rugs and stuff like that are weaved, and towels.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like, hey, next week.
So that's
like I'm spinning. I have no interest in spinning. I have no interest in, but I don't know. What's that? Did I answer the original question?
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? The thing that I noticed that's happening on Fiberchats. Sometimes I would ask a question and people would say, "Oh no, like this is what I'm doing." 2 weeks go by and they're like, you know what? I thought about that question and now, so that happened like a number of times. One time I asked a guy if he ever thought about being a designer, and he was like, no, I'm so busy right now. It's like not for me. I swear to you, it was like a week later. He's like, I'm working on my first pattern, and now he like published a bunch, you know.
That's
So that
not,
happens so often.
I
Wow.
can't see myself being a designer. I think I can yarn dye just to play with the color and not shapes, but like the color and stuff. But as far as designing, I don't know. That was wood. You can't see my hand. I don't know if that is, I never actually tried to sit down and try to design something. Chip has made modifications and designed his own quilts, but because his head just works differently than mine. Mine is more repetitive. He doesn't like repetition and tries to go outside.
I tried knitting, but I felt like I was doing the same thing over and over, and it caused me too much anxiety. Whereas when you're quilting or you're sewing, at every step, I mean, like every 2 minutes, you're doing something different. You're like, you sew, you iron, you know, and you're piecing together, you're pinning, you're constantly doing something different, which maybe satisfies my attention deficit, but I definitely monogamous when it comes to my projects, where the nice thing about like your projects is that you can bounce and kind of pogo stick from one to the other. And it's like, I'm waiting for the day, and Irina can be the witness that you're going to come in with a sock machine. And
I wouldn't mind a sock machine because I don't
aren't
like
they
knitting
like
socks.
expensive?
Well, there's different grades of sock machines.
We have to have the Master Blaster.
I don't. The Master Blaster. The Master Blaster. I'm going to invent the Master Blaster sock machine for sock shock.
Those actually look fun. I never tried them.
It'd be fun.
Well, I mean, is there like any master plan for what's going to happen with Fiber Hustle or with the quilt stream? And we didn't mention it, but you started the second YouTube channel just because you decided that one was not enough, right?
Well, yes. So I started the quilt stream, excuse me. And I wanted it more focused on just quilting, and kind of the evolution of Fiber Hustle is that I'm going to do more sewing projects, more general, because not everybody is into just quilts, and it's kind of fun to explore. So I started the quilt stream, and it was a marathon. I mean, like I had, how many episodes? 25?
More than Fiber Hustle.
No, actually I did. I had, I think like maybe 30 episodes. And Irene, I mean, like I have to hand it to you. When you're doing a show by yourself and you're thinking about like, you're the cameraman, you're everything all in the moment. And it's, I like it. It's a lot of fun. So we've got the quilt stream, we've got Fiber Hustle, and this one really is enjoying the dyeing. And I also, everybody, I don't know if you've heard of the chip baskets. I have so many people who want me to make chip baskets, but again, it's a matter of me coming in at the right price point. I want to make sure that it's something I would be willing to buy, and make sure that what people are getting, it's good stuff. I don't want to sell something that somebody would be disappointed when they actually got it. So yeah, and then we have some ideas about like an actual storefront in its due time.
Yeah, not like a brick and mortar place, but like an online storefront.
See,
okay, you made it sound like we're gonna open like a,
oh gosh, no,
a Target. It's a Fiber Hustle Target. It's just filled with all kinds of good stuff.
It would be Fiberzon.
A fun place. That would be a fun place to visit.
It would be. It'd have trampolines, yarn, and all kinds of stuff.
It has everything.
This place has everything.
Well, I'm gonna put the links to all your channels, all your social media things, so people can find you. And guys, please follow, subscribe, do all that stuff. And thank you so much for being my guest today and taking over my channel.
It has been a pleasure, ma'am.
Irina, it's so nice to meet you.
It is.
And you guys, like and subscribe.
Do it.
Thank you.